Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for joining us for our Fire Relief Fundraiser. We've got 7 great companies that are going to present today and also help out some of the communities that have been affected this summer by terrible wildfires. Next up, we are changing jurisdictions, and we've got Tim Coughlin, CEO of Royal Road Minerals, who we've hosted a number of webinars in the past, but stories changed a little bit recently with some announcements this year that they've gotten into Argentina. I think they've gotten out of Nicaragua, and an interesting deal in Saudi Arabia. So looking forward to hearing all about that, Tim. I don't know if you're going to do a presentation, if you want to pull up a deck or not, or if you're just going to give us an update.
Thanks, Deb. Yeah, I'll do a presentation. So Tony reminds me of how old I am. But
That's what I'm here for, compliments.
I just do the normal share screen, I guess. Is that right?
Yeah, sure. Go for it.
Okay.
And yeah, just for the audience, I guess I should have mentioned that this whole session will contain forward-looking statements, even if companies aren't working off a presentation. So just keep that in mind. And Tim, I'll let you give us a bit of an update, and then we'll do a Q&A.
Thanks, Deb, and thanks for the initiative. I think, I know it's tough for everybody right now, and I think we're all taking it on the chin, and it's very kind of you to establish an initiative like this, and our hearts do go out to all of those people suffering, and the wildlife suffering from the fires, not just in Canada, but especially in this case. Okay, so let me start. This is going to be a bit of a story about the change that you alluded to, Deb, more than anything else, because we're less than a year into that at the moment. But in terms of our purpose, this is what it is. Of course, we're here to create value, but we do also, and I think I speak for most of the industry, and it's kind of sad in a way that in this day and age we have to put this in writing, because for me it goes without saying. Of course, we want to positively affect our communities, and if we can, protect and even improve the environment, and support the host nations by discovering, developing the resources the world needs. And I think that last point's an important one, especially now, although I guess you could be mistaken for being utterly bemused in today's markets in respect of what we all know, the world needs in relation to not just battery metals, but all metals as we embark on this ambitious energy transition. Our strategy, and perhaps I might start with what the old strategy was, and sort of address the comment that Deb made at the start in terms of how we've changed. We, as many of you may be aware, if you do know us, we spent a lot of our professional lives in this company and in others working in challenging environments where the prospectivity was outstanding, and so the challenge was really heavily weighted towards the geopolitical side. And what we used to, in terms of a battery of armory, what we used to convene was support from multilaterals such as the IFC, EBRD, the Inter-American Development Bank. We used to lean on the embassies, back in the days when they were useful and less interested in entertaining politicians. And really, try to punch above our weight geopolitically, and so in many ways, the prospectivity was a given, and the science aspect was a close second to the geopolitical and political work that we were doing. I suppose that worked back in, I guess, and perhaps it had a good helping hand from the market. That worked when we had a tailwind in the market, and we also had a different world. I guess it was less of a sort of devolving economic nationalist environment, and people were actually enthusiastic about emerging economies. That's changed, unfortunately, and so I suppose the catalyst in terms of being proactive and modifying our strategy and changing the tactics was the election in Colombia last year, which we were very close to. We're very close to aspects of the petro government by way of the arrangements we made in Colombia with indigenous communities and with ex-FARC guerrilla cooperatives and all of the sort of stuff that we tried to do to align ourselves with what we thought were sort of the peace process aspirations of that incredible country. So that sort of didn't work. We could tell after that election that we were faced with a less than supportive government, and I guess it was that event that kind of took us to the mountain and forced us perhaps in a positive way at the end to reconsider our model. And so, what are we doing? We are looking to secure multiple high quality assets in several supportive jurisdictions. So we believe that having been scared once and hoping not to fall into the trap of Einstein's definition of insanity, we are working in supportive jurisdictions where we can build mines, we can permit mines. We want to spread that geopolitical risk by spreading our assets across those jurisdictions. We would rather work in high, dry, less populated areas, and so in fact, I suppose what I'm saying reveals the sort of true polarity between what we're doing now and what we used to do. And so we are working in, as Deb said, Saudi Arabia. We're just kicking over some rocks in Morocco, and we're in San Juan province in Argentina, and we're holding on to some assets, particularly in Colombia. This pyramid is basically to illustrate the evolution of our projects, and I guess in many ways we've had to start again, because of the position we took on Colombia, and so things on this side move up slower. On this side, they move up faster, in our opinion. And of course, this is always the difficult part of the triangle. In this case, particularly, and in this market, trying to convince generally disinterested generalists of the pragmatic virtues of exploration projects. That's not an easy task. So just breaking this down into these two arenas. So South America, the two key projects that we have there and that we're retaining and advancing are Güíntar in Colombia and the Santo Domingo copper gold molybdenum project in Argentina. In Morocco, in Saudi Arabia and Morocco, we operate under a 50-50 JV with a Saudi holding company called MSB Holdings. Fantastic group, spectacular country to work in. I suppose that by now most of you have seen at least some communication from the government in Saudi Arabia, and perhaps from some of the companies that are already operating there in term that maybe illustrate the incredible amount of government support, how exciting the environment is, and just how helpful a place it is. It's really nice to be somewhere where you're wanted. So we're pretty excited about Saudi, and we're very pleased to be working with MSB as a holding company. It's a holding company of some of the largest construction and companies in Saudi Arabia, with contracts all over the Middle East. Okay, so just to the projects, Güíntar in Colombia. So this is a porphyry copper gold silver project. We're currently suspended, or we've suspended it whilst we await clarity on the Colombian mining regulation. And put simply, we're waiting for some applications to be converted to titles so we can drill on them. It's a big porphyry system. It's about 6 square kilometers of the purple here on this map, which is hornfells and sodic calcium metasomatism, a few generations of diorite that have been in place, and some pretty good intersections, as some of you will recall. 300 odd meters at 0.8% copper, and etc. Now, it's certainly got legs. It definitely extends to the north, but in order for us to continue working there, we'd need to be a little bit more confident about the current regulatory changes that the country's planning, and of course have that application converted to a title so we can drill on it. Okay, it's Santo Domingo in Argentina. So this is in San Juan province. It's a project we have an option to acquire 100% of. It's owned by a geologist, an ex-university professor. It's taken quite a while to get the titles in order. They were a bit of a mess, but we've managed to do that now, and we started drilling a few weeks ago. It is located actually east of the city of San Juan, so it's not in the high Cordillera. It's in what's called the Sierras Pampeanas terrain, which hosts the Alumbrera copper gold system. It's about an hour and a half out of San Juan at 1,200 meters elevation, and has a railway line that was actually active in the 90s, about 40 kilometers away from the project. So the infrastructure is excellent. You can access it all year round, as opposed to sort of projects in the high Cordillera. Okay, so what really interests us is we think, and what we haven't got on here is sort of the regional alteration mapping, but we think we have a deep concealed intrusion here. We've got a base metal vein system with very high grades. So this is gold up to an ounce with silver and zinc. We have a copper core here at El Arriero. So the purple here are the rock chip results in the core of the system, where we currently have a rig. And it's always dangerous, I know, to be conducting one of these presentations when we haven't released drilling results. So I'll avoid digging too deep into what we're finding, but I'll show you a section in a minute. So 3 porphyries, and what we really think is a large sort of concealed intrusive system. This vein system, Yvette, as a standalone system, we believe has a potential for about 1 million ounces. The meter plus meter wide veins of very high grades. But the main focus for now is this copper core. So we're on the 3rd hole at the moment, and like I said, you'll have to wait for the press release. But what I can say is we are seeing molybdenum veinlets. We are seeing chalcopyrite veinlets. And a little bit of chalcocite that we think is probably fault related. And we believe that we're moving away from the first 2 holes being in a molybdenite molybdenite shell, and we're moving away to test the copper core. But obviously, depth is the key game here. What I might explain as well, I guess, is this is a collapsed breccia. So these are basement blocks that have collapsed into a breccia pipe, which is a fair indication that we're right at the very top of the system. So, we are talking about some deep holes ultimately. Okay, Royal Road Arabia. So it's a 50-50 partnership with MSP Holdings. And I think I've sort of been through an introduction with them. The deal covers the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. So in terms of prospectivity, I guess that's Saudi and Oman. And of course, we're busy, as I said, about to start advancing in Morocco on some sandstone-hosted copper. So the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, I mean, you have to sort of, I guess, suspend for a minute your distrust in the fact that this is ultimately a sales presentation. I've never really worked in an environment that is this supportive. And the numbers, I guess, speak for themselves. So the government will lend you up to 75% of initial capex as development funding at competitive rates. The royalties are 1.5% for gold, 2% for copper. There's a 5-year royalty grace, and there are discounts up to 90% if you are selling your concentrate or whatever locally. The National Geological Database is modeled on the Finnish system, the GTK system in Finland. So you can access most of the geological information, occurrence information, some geophysics and et cetera off the website. And it's a very streamlined licensing and permitting process. Although having said that, a little bit confusing because they run a tender process parallel to a first in, first served license application process. The Arabian-Nubian Shield, I won't spend too much time on that. I guess the simplicity of that diagram is testament to that in any case. It's a Neoproterozoic terrain. It's highly accessible. Exposure is spectacular, as I guess you could imagine. Surprisingly to me, really, is it's conceptually young. And I say that because I thought it had been mapped in quite a bit of detail by the British Geological Survey, by BIGM and various initiatives that Rio Phoenix and Rio Tinto had in place during the 70s and 80s. But it turns out that after conducting some sort of early stage reconnaissance in the country, that's just not the case. And so there is a lot of room to move. So what are we up to? We've just registered our local company. We've got a bit more paperwork to get underway, get out of the way before we can submit our license applications. We've completed an initial generative program across the Shield, conducted some early stage reconnaissance, identified targets. We've bought some purpose-built reconnaissance vehicles, reconnaissance support vehicles, and various pieces of kit, including big drones, hyperspectral scanners, gamma ray spectrometers, and magnetometers, so that we've got a completely autonomous exploration approach. And we're looking forward to hitting this quite aggressively during the next few months. Okay, other projects. We were still are, possibly, I guess, Colombia's largest exploration title and application holder. A lot of those titles and applications are sitting in environments that are probably more are best suited, I guess, to small scale mining, which, from what we understand at least, is an aspect of our sector that the Colombian government will support. And so we've got 4 deals on the way at the moment, not signed yet, but with small scale miners where we hope to get some cash up front and also a share of the royalty from some of the vein and the vein style projects, and also the gold projects that have got obvious alluvial fields sitting within our title package. So we're looking at trying to monetize those assets to support our activities elsewhere. And just quickly on the social side, so the Accelerator, which we won a few awards for a couple of years ago now, is doing just fine. We're looking forward to deploying that in Saudi and also in Morocco. I won't go through the board because I want to leave some time for questions, but the full bios on our website. In terms of the share structure and ownership, so Agnico own 18%, Mackenzie around about 8%, and then I've just paid homage to a few of the other institutions there that do report, and that's it.
Okay, great. Thanks for the overview and update, Tim. For anyone in the audience that wants to ask a question, feel free to input them in the Q&A box at the bottom. And if you don't ask any, then I'll just keep asking my own questions. So incentive for you to put in a smarter question than what I can come up with. So Tim, talking about Argentina, so San Juan continues to move up the ranks as a improving mining jurisdiction in South America. Can you talk a little bit about operating there, how it's been vis-a-vis other regions that you've operated in, and some of the benefits of being there?
Well, I guess like I say, vis-a-vis other regions we've operated in, I guess we're sort of best positioned to look at that true polarity between Colombia and San Juan. Incredibly supportive. And what I mean by that is that, for example, when we took that project over, we weren't aware of just what sort of state those titles were in. And rather than taking the opportunity to perhaps give us some grief. The ministry in San Juan helped us a lot in terms of bringing those titles back up to date and getting us drilling. The quid pro quo is they wanted to see us very quickly getting the drill rig on site. I don't mind that. That's positive engagement. Positive, you've still got this. There are obviously community concerns. We're not up in the high Cordillera, so we're not out of sight, out of mind. But treating communities well, I think at least is one of our strengths.
Okay, and I've got a couple audience questions. So, how does the treasury look currently?
The treasury is 15 million Canadian.
Okay. And then I had a question myself, which ties into an audience question. So you mentioned exploration in Saudi, Oman, and Morocco. Are the Saudi group that you're co-invested with or working with, are they looking at other regions outside of the Middle East and North Africa, or is it just specific to that region?
No, the deal. So the deal basically says any region essentially. So the deal basically says that Saudi Arabia and the Gulf Cooperation Council countries. We're not doing anything in Oman, by the way. It's just covered underneath that aspect of the deal, or anywhere else as agreed, which is where Morocco falls into the conversation. But anywhere where I guess both of our strengths are applicable, so their contacts within the Middle East and our technical capabilities.
Got it. And I had an audience question asking about Egypt specifically. Are you interested in Egypt? Have you followed the recent exploration there?
We've followed the recent exploration there. We've done some work on the licensing, on the regulation, and it falls well behind Saudi in terms of our interest, at least.
How receptive is Morocco to mining and exploration?
Oh well, Morocco wants to double its the GDP contribution of mining over the next 10 years. I think they've got around about over the next 10 years, let's say. The same, very supportive, a little bit complicated because the license sizes are so small. The what they call the research licenses, they're 16 square kilometers. So it becomes a bit of a consolidation deal as opposed to, it's not a place where you're staking large pieces of ground. And we have a very useful local partner there who helps us with that, and of course MSB who do business in Morocco already. But yeah, once again, San Juan, Saudi, and Morocco, three highly supportive mining jurisdictions.
Mm-hmm. And I'm curious about Saudi Arabia. I think you're the first company I've seen do any sort of deal there for exploration. What are the ownership, permitting, operating, tax rules with respect to mining exploration and potentially development? So
I answered some of them in that slide. So corporate tax is 20%. The royalties, it is a royalty. They give it another name, but if you see that, don't get confused. It's a 1.5% royalty for gold, 2% for copper. The ownership, there's I sort of wish they would solve this, but there are two processes. There's a tender process, as I said, where they tender off exploration assets that were identified or worked on by Marden, by the government mining company, or perhaps BRGM, et cetera, where there's some good documentation. And then it's pretty much a standard model, first in, first served license claiming arrangements. You claim your license, you fulfill the requirements, you need to prove you've got capital and technical skills. A lot of focus on ESG, a lot on the social side particularly. And then it's a minimum expenditure requirement, which averages, which increases over the years, but averages about $700 per square kilometer, and you have to complete a work program. And there are three 5-year terms to the exploration license, so 15-year term.
Okay, and then talking about the Nubian Shield, Are there key similarities to other geographic regions in the world that you can point to so investors can sort of have an analog in mind?
In all honesty, and I've worked in quite a few countries, technically, and then also running these companies, I've never quite seen a shield like the Nubian Arabian Shield, and the Arabian side, particularly, obviously, where we've spent most of our time. It is rife with what we call intrusion-related or thermal aureole copper-gold systems. And I suppose probably the best analogy, there are a few, but the best one is the Patterson province in Australia and the Telfer project, so Telfer and Nifty. So Neo-Proterozoic, that sort of young Proterozoic, youngest part of the Proterozoic era. That's probably the best analogy, but essentially the Rowan supergroup. So the Central African copper belt, Zambian copper belt, is the same age, at least in terms of sedimentary host rocks. The Pan-African event that produced some of the IOCGs and some of the other gold systems in Brazil. It's a good vintage, put it that way, but very different and unusual in respect of, if you look at the mag image, it's sort of Dalmatian spots of intrusions and thermal aureoles all over the shield, which is what really excites us.
Okay, great. And one last audience question: how does news flow look throughout the rest of the year?
Well, we've got 5 deals on the that we're trying to sign at the moment, and we were hoping to have had them done by the end of August, but we won't. So we haven't, and it's going to take a little while to get those out. They'll be interesting. There'll be sort of catalyst events in relation to getting us started on some pretty key assets. I think given that we've done this, we've made this kind of 90-degree turn from what we used to do in less than a year. It's going to signal probably in a more robust sense exactly what the company's up to. We've got drilling coming from and quite a bit of channel sampling from the gold systems in around Santo Domingo porphyry. We've got some copper work coming out of Moraco, and with a bit of luck, we'll get these titles secured quickly enough in Saudi. Some gold and copper numbers coming out of there.
Awesome. Perfect. And right on the half-hour mark. Tim, really appreciate the update. Really exciting times. I like to see how you've pivoted into some interesting new jurisdictions. So looking forward to seeing some of those results. And hopefully I'll see you next week. Are you going to be at Beaver Creek?
I'll be at Beaver Creek, yep.
Okay. Well, I'll see you there, Deb. Yeah, safe travels. And thanks again for supporting our fundraiser. Really
my pleasure. Great initiative. Thanks very much.
Thanks.